Kia ora koutou, ko Paul Thompson toku ingoa. My name is Paul Thompson, and today I'm going to talk about land contamination. Hazardous substances are used as part of our everyday lives. We use them at home and in commercial or industrial processes. But even in small quantities, they have the potential to cause contamination of land, and this can degrade our environment. Land contamination can have far-reaching effects, including on human health. The causes of land contamination can be localized, such as from a specific discharge, say from a petrol station or a timber treatment yard, or it can be widespread, such as from long-term extensive use of substances that accumulate in soils, an example being the past use of some insecticides. Another cause of land contamination is historic waste disposal landfill sites in our region. What we know. This slide contains one piece of information from Environment Canterbury's What We Know web pages, which provides this information and other information on land contamination. The graphic shows portions of different activities in our region that we are aware of that involve the use of hazardous activities in industrial or commercial processes. These do not necessarily indicate that land contamination occurs at those locations, but there is heightened risk from those activities. There's one piece of information that needs to be looked at in terms of all the data, including data gaps that exist, but it does indicate the variety of different industrial activities and commercial activities that can be related to land contamination in our region. Why does land contamination matter? As well as impacting on human health and harming ecosystems, contaminated land can extend to the wider environment, including air, water, and soil health, when contamination is able to disperse or accumulate. Historic contaminated sites that are exposed to natural hazards are particularly at risk of impacting on the wider environment, and these risks are likely to increase with climate change. Land contamination also undermines the health or the Māori of land. It adversely affects cultural values and activities, and it can impact on the health of soil in terms of the production of food and other social and economic values. Remediation of land contamination can be costly and it can be challenging. So our current goals, the goals for soil land contamination in our regional policy statement are currently for land that is already contaminated. The goal is to encourage actions that avoid environmental impacts to protect people and the environment. This is typically achieved by investigating contaminated or potentially contaminated land and identifying appropriate actions to address environmental risks. The planning framework works alongside national regulations to do this and encourages the sharing of information such as through the listed land use register. This is a register of all known contaminated and potentially contaminated sites in our region and can be accessed from the Environment Canterbury web pages. The planning framework also encourages working with Ngā Tahu for guidance on the impacts of contaminated land on cultural values, and this recognises that multiple parties have a role to play in responding to land contamination. The goal of the regional policy statement in relation to minimising the risk of land from becoming contaminated is that the planning framework works alongside other legislation specific to the use of hazardous substances and health and safety at work. The primary focus of the planning framework is to minimise the risks to sensitive environments or activities, such as, for example, high hazard areas, that's natural hazards, community drinking water protection zones, the coastal and marine area, and identified cultural sensitive areas. So to support this and minimise the risks from contaminated substances, shared working between local councils and Ngā Tahu takes place in recognition again that multiple parties have a role to play in connection with the use of hazardous substances and minimising land contamination. So we want to hear from you. The question in questions in the bubble on the slide is a kind of a sample of something that might be helpful when considering whether our current goals are still appropriate. Do you think remediation of contaminated land should be incentivised by supporting alternative land use options? Where to find more information? More information on land contamination can be found on our webpage www.ecam.govt.nz/ourfuture. There's also some web pages called What We Know, are also available from the Environment Canterbury web pages. We would like your feedback, and the feedback forms are available at the Our Future web pages. Please help us understand what is important to you. Kia ora.